Welcome to another podcast episode of Questions Are Answers, and today we're going to be talking about how to change how we feel inside. And today is going to be a really fun discussion and conversation, and it's going to be pretty deep. So what I did want to say before we get into the episode is to hopefully change the way that we're going about how we do things. So normally before I started learning a lot of these things and coming to see a lot of these truths in life, I tried to learn as much as I possibly could. Like, I read all the books, I read dozens and dozens and dozens of books, watched hundreds if not thousands of videos, sought after dozens of people's advice, coaches, consultants, like everybody. And I just tried to learn and fill my mind with as much information and knowledge as much as possible. And what that led me to do is be more confused than ever before. And that's why I became very, very lost and completely didn't know who I was anymore, because I had all of this information from thousands of different sources and I didn't know what was truth and what was not. Things didn't start to change until I began listening for something different. Because before, I would listen to agree. I would listen to find out more information. I would listen to learn something. I would listen to try to get something. And that just left me wanting more and desiring more. And the more that I wanted to desire something, the more suffering that I had inside, the more empty I felt inside, the less progress I felt like I made in my life. And so what I would encourage you to do is, as you listen to this podcast episode and every single one after this one, or any information that you come across in your life, don't listen for information. Don't listen to agree with what you're hearing. Don't listen to try to get something out of it. Listen for insight. And it's a totally different paradigm shift that I made in my life. And it's made a world of difference, because I stopped trying to find only information that I agreed with. I tried to stop finding more and more information just to have more information. And I became addicted to learning more information when it didn't actually help me or help me make changes in my life. And the only time that I actually made changes in my life were when I had insights. And insights are when the way that I began to think changed. How I saw the world began to shift and change into something different than what I didn't see before. So that's what I want to encourage you to do with this podcast episode and everything else that you kind of come across in your life. So don't listen for information, don't listen to agree, but listen for insight. And it's a totally different shift. A way that was explained to me by one of my mentors on how to listen for insight instead of information is to listen to what you're hearing as if you're listening to a piece of music, or pretending like you're a rock with ears is what he says all the time. So that's helped me quite a bit. And that helps me to not listen to judge it or to affirm it or to confirm it or anything like that. I just listen to it and let it soak in and move me in a different way that I haven't been moved before. And that's what music does. And that's what listening for insight can do for you. It sounds kind of weird or like different right now, but as you begin listening, you're going to see what I mean as you begin having a lot of these insights and having these moments of realization of, oh, like that's how it actually is. And so listen for that, listen for insight, and magic will happen. Miracles will occur, I promise you. So with that, let's start in with the episode. So how do we change how we feel inside? The way that we can begin changing how we feel inside is by changing the way that we look at things, or changing our understanding of the world. And the majority of the reason of why most of us kind of go through life suffering quite a bit in despair, in psychological turmoil, is because there's a flawed understanding of how the world works. And this is what I came to see more recently with how our mind actually works. And before, I believed that our mind, like, we're supposed to use our minds, we're supposed to think, we're supposed to like analyze everything, we're supposed to make decisions logically, and emotions are the whole reason of why most of us make bad mistakes. And when I followed that advice, or that, I guess, paradigm, it didn't really help me much, and it kept me in the same spot and I didn't break out of my own mind or limiting beliefs and the recurring incessant negative thoughts that I kept having. And it wasn't until that I understood that we don't live in the world. We live in a world of our own thoughts. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. Everything in life comes from the inside out. It comes from our own minds. Like our experiences that we have in life come from our own minds and not actually what happens outside. An example of this is that a single event can happen and there could be hundreds of people witnessing this same event, but there are going to be 100 different perceptions of the same event. This is true within our current political climate and what's going on right now. The same thing is happening in the world, but there's so many different opinions about what's happening. So what's true, right? If you're left wing or right wing or whatever it is, depending on how you're viewing the world, it's different about how you see what's currently happening. This proves and shows and demonstrates that we live in a world of our own thoughts, not actually what's happening. And we assign meaning to certain things, and then we take it and internalize it, and that is what produces the feelings that we have inside. So a lot of people right now will think that the world is going through extreme turmoil, and it is, but they'll say this is the worst thing that's ever happened, or this is the best president, or this is the worst president, or whatever it is. Like, it's the same president, but we have so many different views of what the president is, what he should or shouldn't be doing. That just shows how there's millions of different perceptions of the same person. This happens with everything in our lives. Whenever there's an event that happens, there are so many different perceptions that are formed, and the one that we choose is the one that we internalize, assign meaning to, and then it produces a feeling. Another example of how we live in a world of thought and not in the actual world is concepts like money. So if I go up, or if you go up to 100 people and ask 100 different people, what is money to you? And you wait for their answer, how many answers will you get? How many different answers will you get? You're going to get 100 different answers, right? Because money means so many different things to people. Money to some people means freedom. Some people, money is happiness. Some people, money is the root of all evil. Money is liberty. Money is opportunity. Money is good. Money is bad. Money is greed. Whatever it is. Same thing with affluent people. If we go and ask 100 different people what they think of Jeff Bezos or the richest people in the world, or the top 1% of the world, what are they going to say? A lot of people will say tons of different things. And so that again shows that we live in a world of thought and not in the actual world, because the person's just a person that has money. That's it. But we assign meaning to it, and that creates our perception. And based on how we view it is how we're going to feel inside. So if we believe that rich people are greedy, they are money hungry, they only care about themselves, they're selfish, we're going to feel very bad inside whenever we go outside and see mansions or Ferraris or whatever else it is. And the same thing with anybody else in life. And understanding that everything in our life, the experiences that we create, come from us. It all comes from the inside out. Knowing that gives us so much freedom, because now it's not as much of external events that's affecting us. And we can realize that it all comes from within us, and we create these meanings inside of us. We create these perceptions. And the beauty of that is that we can change that. And that's how we can begin to change how we feel inside, is to realize that we are creating our experiences in life. And it's not right or wrong, whatever experience that we're creating. It's just knowing that we can change it. Before this understanding, I would try to change my behavior all the time. I would go out and say, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. I'm going to read in the morning. I'm going to go do a cold shower. I'm going to run. I'm going to do all these different things and eat really well and have a very, very strict schedule and just like force myself into these habits. And they never worked. They never ever worked. Whenever I would try to change my behavior, it very rarely ever worked. And if it did, it would only last for maybe a couple days, weeks max, and I would revert back to what I was doing before. And that's because I was trying to change my external environment by what I'm doing. I didn't try to change what was in my mind. And that's why it never created any lasting change. The only time that I created lasting change in my life was when I was able to change how I saw things. When I stopped seeing money as being the root of all evil, when I stopped seeing that I wasn't enough, when I stopped seeing the external world creates how I feel inside, when I stopped believing that the external environment actually creates my internal environment, that's when I began to be liberated from external events. And no matter what happened outside, I knew that I could be okay inside. That is the beginning of true permanent change. Trying to change my behavior was kind of like trying to change the fruit of a tree. Let's say I wanted to have oranges and I wanted to have strawberries, but I kept planting orange trees expecting that strawberries would come out of there. And I would try to change and manipulate the fruit, but I didn't realize that if I changed the seed, right, the root essentially, of what I was trying to create, then it would keep producing the same thing. So I would keep trying to like change the oranges on the tree, like after they're, already produced and ripe. And trying to change my behavior was kind of like trying to change a fruit of a tree and making that fruit grow, but let's say it's like stagnant, it's not doing much, it's not growing. And I try to like water that fruit and fertilize that fruit, like the actual fruit, but I'm not realizing that the tree is not getting proper water and nutrients and fertilizer. That's kind of the same thing. And so if I'm not addressing the root, the fruits will always cause a lot of problems. And so that's what I've done more recently, is going to the root of everything and realizing that the root of all of my suffering was coming from my own thinking. I would produce these thoughts and this thinking of how something should be and causing my own suffering. So I would come up with ideas of, oh, my life isn't good right now because I should be further, or I should have more money, I should be more successful. Like other people are way further than me, than where I am currently, and that's why I'm causing all of the like stress in my life. And all of that is my own doing. It is all coming from my own thinking. If you listen to a lot of previous episodes, what broke me out of that was asking, like, who would I be without those thoughts of me wanting to be further than where I am, of me wanting to have more money than where I am, or having a better life, or being more happy or peaceful, whatever it is. Who would I be with those thoughts? I would be in the moment happy, joyful, grateful, free. And so that's what I've come to see. And what's helped me so much was to just see it for what it is, and that all of it was coming through my own thinking. Whenever I would have a lot of thinking, that's when I had way more stress. And the less thinking I had, the less stress that I had. And it wasn't about changing what I'm thinking, like replacing it with positive affirmations, positive thoughts all the time, or I would do that sometimes, but that's not the main thing that I would really be doing, because then it would become a battle of, okay, let me wrestle with my thinking and try to put it in a headlock of like positivity and try to replace my negative thoughts. And then back and forth, it would continually just keep relapsing of, oh, positive thinking, negative thinking, positive thinking, negative thinking. And it would just cause an internal civil war. And that led nowhere. It actually made it worse, because there's so many different voices in my head. And I thought I was going crazy every other minute of combating. No, I shouldn't be thinking negative thoughts. Like, that makes me a terrible person. Or I can't believe I judged that person. And I start thinking about me judging that person, which then creates a death spiral downwards. And it just gets worse and worse. But when I started to see that thinking itself is what produced this suffering, then it doesn't matter what kind of thinking I'm having. I just realized that, oh, it's any thinking in general is what's causing this. So let me just let go and let the thinking settle. Let me create space in my mind and slow things down so that they can begin settling. And my mind naturally becomes clear, right? Like if we want to try to create clear water out of like muddy, cloudy water, what do? We let the bowl of dirty water sit, and the dirt will settle, and it will become clear. And the nature of water is clear, and the nature of our minds is clear. And that's all we really have to do in order to break out of the cycle. The way that we can begin to change is by doing something different, right? We can't keep doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. But what we can do is allow our minds to sit, give it space. And from that space, new thoughts will come in. New experiences will begin to occur. And when we aren't as attached to our thoughts, and when we aren't thinking about our thoughts as much, that's when we slowly begin to become happier, more peaceful, more fulfilled, more grateful, more all of the things that we want in life. That is kind of the biggest realization I've had more recently, and what I wanted to share with you so that hopefully you can have some of these insights as well and begin to create a lot more of that peace and fulfillment and happiness in your life that you're looking for. With that, I'll begin to explain more in detail about certain parts of what we talked about today. It's a little bit of a dense topic, but hopefully you can begin to see a lot more of what the truth is and how the mind works and how we actually create experiences from the inside out. Thank you so much for listening, and I really enjoyed having you here and talking to you. So if you enjoyed the episode, please do go and leave a review. It definitely helps me a ton, as well as other people, because the podcast really only grows from reviews, and that's how they kind of pick it up in the search engine of podcasts. So if you could do that, it would mean the world to me, and you would be doing the world a huge favor by bringing this message out to more people. And if you really did get something out of it, if you had some insights, share it with a friend that you would love to hear this and to help them see the truth of how things are and how they can kind of break free from the feeling of what they're having in their lives and to begin creating new experiences. So thank you so much again, and I will see you guys on the next one.